Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the session, Equity, Measuring and Closing Energy Efficiency Access Barriers for Low-Income Households. My name is Jackie Berger, and I'll be your moderator today, and we have 4 great presentations coming up. We're going to start with Alex Lopez, and he's going to be talking about reaching low-income customers, insights from a national survey. Alex Lopez is the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Uplight, where he manages Uplight's residential behavior, energy efficiency, rates, engagement, and customer care solutions. Alex previously worked at the District of Columbia Department of Energy and Environment, where he helped manage the DC Solar for All program, and at Oracle Utilities, where he led regulatory sales and market development in the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic regions. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Jackie. Let me try and share my slides. And good morning. My name is Alex Lopez, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Uplight, a technology and managed services company that connects energy providers and their customers to the products and services that accelerate decarbonization, reduce costs, and positively impact people and their communities. Today, I have the privilege of sharing results from a nationwide survey of utility customers with a special focus on low and moderate income customers, or LMI, and also discussing how Uplight is employing these insights towards delivering highly personalized and seamless customer journeys. For this study, Uplight partnered with the Sea Change Institute, an organization with deep expertise in energy and utility research, in particular, expertise around customer behavior. Sea Change Institute conducted a 12-minute survey of 1,000 customers from all over the United States. The survey results were statistically significant and normalized against attributes such as census region, age, gender, and income. All of the respondents identified that they personally made energy-related decisions in their household and had an account with an electric utility. 54% of respondents were considered low to moderate income customers, which we defined as households making $60,000 per year or lower. We all understand that the LMI segment faces unique challenges related to energy affordability and energy burden. Yesterday, I learned that 25% of American households experience high energy burden, which ACEEE defines as spending over 6% of household income on energy costs. Uplight's study adds some additional context to this finding. Compared to the non-LMI customer group, LMI customers in this study were 3 times more likely to have had months in which they were unable to pay rent or mortgage, 3 times more likely to report having struggled to pay an electric bill, 3 times more likely to have postponed purchases in order to pay an electric bill, and 3 times more likely to have months when they were unable to pay an electric bill. Significantly, 1/3 of LMI customers reported not being able to keep their home at a comfortable temperature, i.e. warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Our survey revealed diverse needs and characteristics of utility LMI customers. There are a number of important subsegments within this group: where they live, whether they own or rent, income source, age, and employment status all make LMI customers unique. How do you reach LMI customers in a way that will resonate? What types of offers are most attractive, and how should these offers be messaged? There's clearly no one-size-fits-all approach to serving LMI customers. Based on survey results, we were able to pull out a number of meaningful segments from the LMI population. For example, renters not only face a higher energy burden, but they also have less control over their energy using equipment that affects their bills. Older customers, including retirees, need to manage their energy costs on a fixed income budget. This can significantly alter how seniors want to interact with their utility. Finally, acknowledging the market impact of economic contraction under COVID-19 that disproportionately affected lower income workers in the service and hospitality industries. We see a significant awareness gap among LMI customers with regard to utility programs. One example was high bill alerts. High bill alerts are an increasingly common tool offered by utilities to proactively warn customers if they are on track to receive a high bill. High bill alerts typically include energy efficiency tips and links to products and programs designed to help customers reduce energy and better manage their utility bill. Despite 65% of LMI customers reporting that an unexpected high bill strains their finances, over half of LMI customers had never heard of the high bill alert program offered by their utility, and just 14% of LMI respondents had reported using a high bill alert. One Southeast utility partnered with Uplight to launch a high bill alerts program after COVID started because they knew that their customers may be spending more time at home with increasing energy consumption and that their energy bills could be on the rise. This utility found that 96% of customers receiving the high bill alerts found that the alerts were helpful during this period when many of us had to radically adjust our daily lives and behaviors. This example highlights the impact of overcoming the awareness gap and how this gap limits LMI program participation. Lack of awareness is the primary reason cited by LMI customers for not participating in utility programs. Additionally, many customers did not believe that their utility would want to help them save energy or manage their bill. After all, why would a utility be interested in helping their customer use less of their product? LMI customers were also concerned about affordability, and many assumed that they wouldn't be able to afford the upfront cost for products that improve their home efficiency. Lastly, we found a gap in perceived applicability of LMI programs, particularly among renters, 24% of whom did not believe that utility offerings applied to them. The customer awareness gap for LMI programs results in missed opportunities for improved home energy efficiency and the co-benefits of home health, safety, and comfort that often accompany energy efficiency improvements. LMI customers are less likely to have bought LED light bulbs, installed smart thermostats, or taken advantage of utility rebates or energy efficiency tips. After digesting all this research and reviewing with our utility partners, Uplight developed a model for how utilities can better engage their LMI customers. This starts with first identifying and qualifying LMI customers, using propensity scoring or low-touch surveys or self-affirmations to identify customers that may qualify for LMI programs. It is critical to create a connected and seamless experience so that when you do get the attention of an LMI customer, you can deliver the right message and connect them to the additional opportunities for assistance. The first priority is to drive customers to bill management programs, such as rate assistance, budget billing, or high bill alerts that allow them to stabilize and better manage their bills. Then DSM programs can structurally help LMI customers reduce their bills over a longer period. Once the customer understands the value of DSM, demand-side management, utilities should introduce them to other emerging programs, such as electrification, dynamic pricing, and community solar as a good next step. And then follow up with continuous engagement to ensure that customers are staying on track and made aware if there are new offerings or upcoming deadlines, such as annual program re-enrollments. By following this engagement cycle, the utility can educate LMI customers and steer them to the next best action for each stage of their customer journey. Doing so reinforces the value of program participation and establishes the utility as the energy advisor to help LMI customers with energy affordability issues. And this is how we return to the beginning of the virtuous engagement cycle. Uplight is focused on enabling utilities to deliver this frictionless and highly personalized customer experience. Uplight's analytics can help pre-qualify customers and deliver next best actions that steer customers to eligible programs. During the engagement process, the utility can message through tools like home energy reports, rate advisors, or high bill alerts that both educate and drive towards the actions most relevant for that individual's customer's needs. We can even move customers through to deeper levels of engagement and bill management through time of use rates and demand response to optimize connected devices sold through the utility's marketplace offerings. How we engage LMI customers must be differentiated based on segment. Two common LMI segments are low-income renters and fixed-income homeowners. For low-income renters, many utilities are using low-income versions of the Common Home Energy Report program. These reports emphasize the connection between behavior and bills and provide low-cost and no-cost energy efficiency tips. The low-income reports might include a promotional module for no-cost energy efficiency measures such as LED bulbs or smart power strips that can be redeemed through the utility's giveaway hub or a free retail channel. Messaging on these home energy reports should be explicit that the offering is applicable to renters. For fixed income homeowners, so fixed income homeowners are another segment, older homeowners that may need to prioritize bill stability and predictability. Home comfort is going to be a key concern for this segment, and enrolling in high usage alerts is one way that these customers can avoid unexpected high bill shocks. The High Bill Alert program can also recommend enhanced rebates for energy efficiency products offered through the utility marketplace that improve customer control and comfort, such as smart thermostats. So in conclusion, energy providers are struggling to overcome participation and awareness gaps and meet the needs of their LMI customers. To effectively engage LMI customers, it is critical to understand the diversity within this segment and to target education and program offerings in a way that provides a highly personalized and seamless experience. Each stage of the customer journey should drive toward positive outcomes that meet the LMI customer needs and deepens trust and ongoing engagement with our utility. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions you have.
Okay, thank you so much, Alex. If there's any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We have time for a couple of questions now, and then we'll have questions for all of the speakers at the end of the session. One question for you, Alex. As part of this study or other research that Uplight has done, have you looked into what methods of communication work best for different segments of the population, such as email, letters, text message, etc.?
That is a good question. This particular study did not look at methods of communication. However, there is a lot of research that indicates that lower income customers may be more likely to use or to rely on mobile devices for their primary mode of digital engagement.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we're going to move on to our second speaker, and that will be Nat Treadway. And he will be presenting on Equity in a Clean Energy Economy Collaborative. Nat is a co-founder of DEFG, a customer insights and advisory firm working with utilities. Nat manages the Low Income Energy Issues Forum, a group of 400 professionals focused on bill affordability. Nat testified on energy efficiency programs in Texas from 1985 to 1995. Later, he advised the PUC of Texas on full separation of regulated wire services from competitive services. He also participated in 7 deliberative polls that fundamentally changed how Texas views renewable resources. Okay, take it away, Nat.
Thank you, Jackie. You can hear me and you can see the screen, correct?
Very good.
Great, thank you. So that little bio and looking at the screen, you can see you're talking to an old guy. So the problem with having gray hair and being older is that you always have 3 presentations that you want to pack into 10 minutes. I'm going to attempt to do that. The first few slides are about a new project that Jackie just mentioned, and that's what the abstract talks about. But I'll really just breeze through those, and you'll see the links in there, and I just put the link in chat. And I invite everyone to read more about that and get involved with that project. But that's really what I'm using to as a starting place to jump into equity and how I think equity is going to have a big impact on how we deal with energy efficiency and a lot more programs and other things. So the second section, I'm going to touch on the work that we do. DEFG is a 18-year-old organization. For about 12 years, we've really focused in on research related to retail customers and what they do. And so I'll touch upon some of that research. And the purpose there, again, is not to spend a lot of time on it, but rather to invite you to reach out and get copies of surveys that we've done or reports from focus groups or whatever, if that would interest you. And then thirdly, I'll talk about this issue of equity and why I think it's going to put energy efficiency front and center. So as I said, this Equity in a Clean Energy Economy, a collaborative, it's got about 375 people involved with it now. We really got it going in about April, May, and we'll continue through Q1 of next year. It's not too late to be involved, and there's lots of materials available. So I think that's self-explanatory, but I did want to just, I mean, the mission is, as the name implies, the mission is to bring people together and to look at equity, see what's going on. Obviously, many things going on in a number of states and at some universities, trying to pull all that together and with these different tracks of work, look at what's going on there and summarize that and get a dialogue on it. We're doing some interesting things. I have two that I'm pointing to here. This is an 11-minute video that you can watch, which is it's a nice video interviewing a pastor in Atlanta, and it gives some insights into a poor community in Atlanta and how some of the issues related to clean energy and what they're thinking about there. And likewise, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, just a second. I apologize. I clicked the screen and it actively started the video. I apologize. Clicking off to the side, there we go. Another thing, and this, you can watch this presentation and download it. This was a panel that got into some of these issues in a pretty interesting way. Encourage your review of that as well. And then I also wanted to draw attention very quickly to one of the tracks that I'm involved with is a case studies track, and we're encouraging anyone and everyone to fill out this survey form if you have an equity case study, something successful in equity, a case study that you would like to share. This group is reviewing those and recommending to the other tracks of work about the best way to, some of the best practices. So let me jump into the next phase. This is, so when we think about clean energy economy, it can involve a lot of different things, but I'm just highlighting three here. And this is really just feeding back to everybody what you probably already know, so we have a common basis of discussion. But on electric vehicles, there's going to be various investments in things, and I'm calling those the features, and there are going to be various possible programs, basically, you know, along the notion of, well, electric vehicles are going to help middle income and upper middle income people. What do we do to make it more accessible to lower income people in the transportation sector? And there are various ways. Similar kind of discussion with rooftop solar. Should low income customers have access to rooftop solar? Should it be community solar? And so you've heard these discussions and these arguments. And often, though, I think a lot of the discussion is about providing equal or similar access, that's what people think is an equitable solution. I would point out that pretty much when we have laws and programs to promote clean energy, it often assumes that some of the programs, that the beneficiaries have money and they're going to qualify for tax benefits. So this is where the equity issue comes in. Lots of programs are inequitable because they're available to people, upper middle class people, wealthy people, and I'm not just highlighting. This was a presentation on subsidies in clean energy that y'all can look into. So I like to contrast by thinking about who are the people that earn more than 100,000 a year, who are the people that earn less than 50,000 a year. Because you always, for decades in working in the industry, people say, well, no one spends more than 10 minutes engaged with the utility. They just pay their utility bill. And that's true for people appointed by the governor to be regulatory commissioners. It's true for the lawyers arguing in front of the regulatory commissioners. And it has nothing to do with the real life experience of consumers who earn less than 50,000 a year and struggle to pay. And so I'm just drawing attention to this difference. In fact, there's a significant engagement already just trying to keep the lights on. If you're less than $50,000 a year, you're worrying about bills, you're applying for financial assistance and so forth. So when I think about understanding customers, I say, well, you really need to look at doing the research to understand them better. And it's not just a matter of looking at programs or looking at rates, but the customer experience is defined by a huge number of interactions with the utility, and they all matter. They all together make what we would call the customer experience, and it's a good or bad experience based on that. And so I've listed a bunch here. If we had time and I went around, each of you could probably name 2 or 3 additional details of the utility service that are not listed here, which is just to say that we have to understand all of these things to really understand the customer experience. So I mentioned research. I won't spend time here, but we've done, this was the 44th survey we've done in the last 10 or 12 years, gathering information about a whole range of issues, all of those aspects, or many of those aspects on the previous slide. Questions on that, working with our utility partners. We've talked a lot about segmentation and explored that. It's not a matter of talking about, for example, the best way to communicate with low-income customers, but what type of low-income customers. Just as the previous speaker was saying, you really need to segment, and we've done a good deal of work on that in terms of how best to communicate and how best to enroll people. We've further done customer interviews, having expert companies, in this case, Heart of the Customer, a journey mapping specialized company, interview customers and develop journey maps. This was 2 maps, one on the inexperienced energy assistance applicant, and then the experienced one. Again, these are just illustrative. If that interests you, please contact me. And then let me move over into another aspect of the experience. So here's an 11-year-old report, bringing a quote from Salt River Project, SRP, that's had prepayment for a number of years. And I'll let you read that on your own. But a few years ago, we were in Tulsa doing 2 or 3 focus groups with customers on prepayment. And people literally were saying, now you're in control, they're not in control of you, because they felt the sense of control by having prepaid energy. I know that prepay is a very controversial service. And so I present this slide so that people can think about prepayment at a behavioral level. It's important to think about the various aspects of prepay. And here I talk about the 10 C's of features of prepay. Obviously, I could present a 45-minute presentation just on this slide, because there's a lot of fascinating things. But the purpose here is to get each of you to think deeply about each of the aspects of utility service and the consumers that have that service, and think about the influences on their lives and the changes in their behaviors by every aspect of service. Every aspect of service is important. Again, as I said earlier, not just the tariff, not just enrolling in an energy efficiency program, but absolutely every aspect of service. So I present a challenge, and the challenge is, can we begin to think at a more human level by understanding consumers better? Can we think about how this issue of equity that has become a big deal in the last couple of years, driven by the big deal of the last 5 years in this country, with a lot of people moving in a different direction. But how does this redefine fairness? And I just want to briefly, I only have a minute or so remaining, but I want to briefly touch on excellent report here by the folks at Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, or this was a presentation, and I pulled this out. You all know this, but just as that reminder that residential energy efficiency is pretty cheap, 3 cents. Low income as measured is more expensive. So we often think, well, we can't do too much low income stuff because it's expensive. And I would challenge that, because it's a basis of how you're determining what makes it expensive and not expensive. So back to that earlier slide when I gave the 3 examples of clean energy, the solar panels, the cars, and we think in terms of equity is sameness or fairness, give them the same, get everybody to get the same thing. Oprah says, you got a car, you got a car, you got a car. That's just not realistic. There are families that are struggling and don't have cars at all. You're not going to get them an electric vehicle, but maybe rather than $5,000 or more that they might get out of an electric vehicle program, maybe they just need $2,500 for weatherization of the homes. And so maybe you can completely reconsider the way you look at the economics of weatherizing a home. So I hope that all the discussions that we're having now on equity, I certainly hope that they quickly move to the realm in which people realize that a lot more funding of energy efficiency programs is needed and is necessary and is appropriate. There's my timer. But I want to just take, and there are 2 more slides, and I'll briefly cover them, but rethink real basic assumptions, which I'm calling fundamental reform. So first of all, in thinking fundamentally, you heard me talk about all the services. I'm not just talking about programs, energy efficiency programs or tariffs, but think of all the services. But when you contrast tariffs and programs, I think this is really important to understand. Tariffs are the baseline. Tariffs are the given. Tariffs are mandatory. Tariffs are core and fundamental. Tariffs don't go away. They just get reformed a little bit. Programs are required year by year to justify themselves, to prove that they're economical against a basis of assumptions that define how you do that cost-benefit analysis. So challenge that, because maybe a program, maybe energy efficiency should not be programmatic, rather it should be built into the tariff. I worked in regulation for 14 years here in Texas as a staffer. So there's a number, I'm aware of some very deep, very fundamental assumptions in regulation. I think we should be challenging all of those, asking about why everybody in a residence is in the same residential class, ask about whether treating people equally with a tariff that applies to everybody, whether that is your definition of fairness or whether it's inequitable because of the sameness of the treatment. I've got a summary here, but there's not time for that, so I will leave it for any questions. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nat, for that great presentation. Let's go ahead and put up the poll while I ask a couple of questions to Nat that came up in the chat. We probably won't be able to get to all of the questions, but please remember that we have the breakout rooms at the end, so feel free to join the room to ask your question if I didn't get to it. So one question was that you mentioned the case studies, and somebody went and took a look, and it said that submission closed on September 24th. Are people still able to submit case studies?
Well, great. I'm glad somebody checked that. Yes, I just haven't updated that. We've extended the time, and there's really no reason to close it at any time as long as the project keeps going. So we're still gathering information, and we welcome that. And I will try to get that updated so it doesn't say that anymore.
Okay, great. And then another question is, the journey maps that you mentioned, are those public? Somebody requested access to those.
Yeah, just send me an email and tell me who you are and say, hey, can I have that? And there aren't many reasons why I'd say no.
Okay, terrific. So we have the poll up there. Why do you think low-income customers do not ask for help with their utility bills? Let's go ahead and see what the results of that poll was. Okay, so we see that 35% said it was burdensome enrollment, and 65% says don't know that help is available. So that goes back to that question about education and making sure that households know that the help is there for them. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to our third presentation. And Jill Vohr will be presenting on closing the energy savings access gap. Jill is the consumer marketing team lead for Energy Star certified products at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star labeling branch. She has more than 30 years of experience in environmental marketing, including 21 with the EPA's Energy Star program. Her fun work includes campaign planning and implementation, leveraging multimedia channels and co-marketing with thousands of Energy Star manufacturing, retailer, and utility partners representing America's biggest brands. Okay, go ahead, Jill.
Okay, just getting my slides up. There we go. Hello, everybody. It's so great to be here, and I really enjoyed those other speakers, and I might just join you in your break room to ask questions. I'm with the Environmental Protection Agency. and I'm with the EPA's Energy Star program. So energy equity is a real important issue for us, and even more so with the new administration. We're deeply committed to bringing the benefits of energy savings to everyone, and excited to have this opportunity to share ideas of how we can work together with all of you stakeholders. So I'm going to be presenting on that. We will start by defining what the energy savings access gap is, as well as the why of the access gap, and then ideas for how we as stakeholders invested in promoting energy savings can collectively close that gap. Okay, so I think it was Alex who referred to this ACEEE study, this recent 2021, on energy burdens, defined here as the percentage of household income spent on home energy bills. We draw the following takeaways. A lot of you are very familiar with this, but essentially what I want to pull out from this is that low-income households, Black, Hispanic, Native Americans, renters, and older adult households all have disproportionately higher energy burdens than the national median household. In fact, low-income households spend 3 times more of their income on energy costs compared to the median spending of non-low-income households, and of low-income households, 67% experience high energy burden. So what are the factors that contribute to this burden? And obviously with Energy Star, I work in the labeling branch, we certify products. So we wanted to see what role products play in this energy burden. And so we looked at this data from the Residential Energy Consumption Survey, it's RECS, that shows that low-income households, this is looking at lighting, actually have the highest proportion of incandescent light bulbs. Yes, they are still in households. Households still have incandescents, if you can believe it. And these, of course, are 90% less efficient than LED bulbs, Energy Star certified LED bulbs. Looking at refrigerators, we see the same results. Most old energy hog refrigerators are found in low-income households. And if you look at other products in the RECS data and other data sources, similar findings. Bottom line, energy efficient product adoption is not happening evenly among income groups. Okay, so given the priority that energy equity and environmental justice plays in EPA's mission, Energy Star really couldn't just leave this data alone. We needed to do some digging to determine the why of this gap. Working with customer segmentation data that we got from Claritas, we were able to organize US audiences by 2 factors. One, whether they are currently using an energy saving appliance, and 2, their interest in saving energy. Through this analysis, we identified 5 distinct segments. One of these segments, what we termed as striving energy intenders, represent low-income households, 40,000 or below, who, despite indexing low on using energy-saving products, index really high on interest. So it's not that they're not interested in saving energy, at least the segment that we looked at. That's not the reason they have such a high proportion of energy hog products in their homes. So we kept on digging. Let's look at other factors such as affordability. We've talked a lot about affordability. It definitely is an issue. We all know that for lighting, incandescent bulbs are generally less than half the price of LED bulbs. And you know what? This is why utilities are offering incentives to help bring down the cost to increase demand, of course. But we also conducted an analysis of affordability among Energy Star certified appliance categories, and also found discrepancies, particularly among clothes washers, clothes dryers, room air conditioners, and room air cleaners, where efficient models had consistently higher price points than inefficient models. Now, fortunately, with LED lighting, utility incentive programs have successfully increased affordability. But then we have to look at where those incentives have traditionally been available and where low-income audiences shop. This is data on shopping. We see a picture emerge of decreased access, not because low cost efficient LEDs are not available, but they are not available even with the utility incentives at the right retail locations. More data on where low-income audiences shop demonstrates that despite big box retailers such as the Home Depot and Lowe's lowering prices with utility rebates, these lower prices won't reach most low-income customers since they don't shop generally at these stores, especially for lighting. It's especially true for light bulbs since, it's an impulse purchase. Nobody's going to get up in the morning and say, oh, I want to buy a light bulb and actually make a trip just to get the light bulb, right? They're going to just be at the grocery store or be at the drugstore and, oh, I need a light bulb, and pick one up. And this is not where the incentives are available. The good news is we are working with many of our lighting manufacturing partners, GE Lighting, Lamage, others, they've already made inroads to address this access gap in lighting by working with utilities to offer low-cost LED lighting where low-income customers shop. And so in particular, Walmart, a lot of work being done with Walmart and dollar stores. But more work has to be done, right? Because we have to extend these rebates and get them into stores like drug and grocery that I mentioned earlier. And here's another thing, the potential phasing out of incandescents and utility incentive programs along that, the cost of LED bulbs will likely increase. And despite being the only game in town, I think this is going to exacerbate the access gap, and I'm concerned about it. And that is why Energy Star is currently encouraging our utility partners to keep their lighting incentives and maybe move them into their income eligible programs. And we'll talk a little bit about work that's being done there. Let's look at appliances. Even though there are utility rebates on energy efficient appliance, they are right now not big enough incentives to bring the price points down to the levels of their energy hog counterparts. To close the gap, we look to states like Illinois that have generous programs to support low income, and utilities such as ComEd and Ameren that have novel programs that offer additional incentives on appliances at retail locations in low income communities, what we call income eligible stores. This is really an exciting program that has been developed in Illinois, and we're hoping that other programs like this will get started, because we have to expand this availability of lower priced appliances at more stores. So it's also an assortment issue. When you go to a retail store, oftentimes they'll carry the high margin products. So we're also working closely with retailers to figure out how to increase the assortment so you have the lower cost, energy efficient products, not just the inefficient, available, again, where these customers shop. Once affordability is addressed, then the only other barrier to access is simply information. So both of my teammates on this call talked about awareness building, connecting striving energy intenders with opportunities to save by developing messages that will engage them and promoting those messages through media channels that will reach them. To come up with optimal messages around energy saving that would best engage this important audience. Again, we looked at the customer segmentation data and discovered that both a practical interest in saving energy, that's important, right? Everybody wants to save, that resonates, but the aspirational interest in a better life plays a big role here in terms of engaging this customer. We all want a better life. And it's not just about saving money, it's about quality life issue and better performing products. And then we looked at media usage, and we had some questions around this. Yes, absolutely, more use of the mobile phone, but a clear preference for social media, particularly Instagram, as well as YouTube, and again, predominantly via mobile. So putting this together, the ad agency that we work with, C+C, developed several campaigns focused on connecting striving energy intenders with opportunities to save, including, of course, Energy Star certified lighting, refrigerators, And finally, I'll talk about our Energy Star Day campaign that's specifically focused on energy equity, bringing the benefits of energy savings to those that need it the most. So I'm going to show you some campaigns right now. And what's great about these campaigns is not only are we letting them know about the opportunity to save with energy saving products, but we're also pointing them to where they can buy these products, where they can access them. And then of course, tips and other ways that they can save. So here's our Light the Moment campaign, connecting consumers with affordable Energy Star certified LED bulbs. It's geo-targeted to markets at which these discounted bulbs are available at retail locations where this audience shops. So the Walmarts, the dollar stores that our manufacturing partners are working with. The creative featured relatable images of memorable family moments, combining the aspirational with the practical energy and money savings benefits. The media mix was all mobile display, social media. Also, we included some point of sale extensions at the dollar stores, at Walmart, bringing it all together so that they went in, when they went into these stores, they saw these low cost bulbs and could connect it to the communication that we were sharing. And now I'm going to play the ad.
Light me up again. Light me up again. Light me up again. Light me up again.
Yes, you can see the aspirational in there. It's not just about practical saving money. And we found that this kind of approach really does resonate. And here's our Flip Your Fridge campaign focused on refrigerators, getting rid of those old energy hog refrigerators, especially prevalent in lower income households, and replace them with Energy Star. Again, we combined messages featuring energy and money savings with quality of benefits and used a media mix of social ads and YouTube. For this campaign, we also developed versions in Spanish. Both of these campaigns delivered well over benchmark engagement rates among this audience. And now I'll play this ad.
Did you know an old refrigerator uses a third more energy than a new one that is Energy Star certified? Replace that old fridge with an Energy Star certified refrigerator, and you could save hundreds of dollars in energy costs. You may also qualify for a rebate from your local utility, helping you save even more. So flip your fridge. It's cool for you, cool for the planet.
Again, hitting that better quality of life. My favorite part of that is the hog coming into the picture in the before the Energy Star. And then finally, our Energy Star Day campaign. It's entirely focused on closing the energy savings access gap with the tag Save Today, Save Tomorrow, Save for Good, obviously for good, having multiple meanings. For this cause-related campaign, we engaged our manufacturer, retailer, and utility partners to join us in sharing their opportunities to save with incentives and other special deals, along with utility income qualified programs and service offerings. So again, connecting low-income customers to opportunities to save, so lower prices and where they can access those lower prices. Our media drove traffic to a campaign landing page that included information on where low-priced energy efficient products are available, plus rebates and income eligible programs from utilities and more, again, to help connect the customers to opportunities to save. So, you know, in sum, before I play the last ad, it's all about the proverbial reaching customers where they are and the importance of really understanding exactly where they are to make this successful. So it's really about, it's got to be about all those factors, the right price, the right channels, and the right messaging. And so I'll conclude with this ad, last ad.
My parents save money on energy bills. They call it our ice cream fund.
We just became a family of 4.
Anywhere we can save money is huge.
And I mean anywhere.
The grandkids went in and bought me this dishwasher. They told me it saves energy. Right now, it's saving Grandpa.
Hey, mira esto.
This LED will probably still be working when she goes to college. And with the energy savings, I can start a college fund.
It's been over a year since I've had a working washer. I just don't have words to express how happy I am.
I want to save energy and help the planet so I can keep playing outside for a long time.
Thank you so much, Jill. That was really great. We're going to move right into our next presentation now. The next presentation is from Andrew Robison, and his presentation is When the Lone Star Froze Over. Andrew is a research analyst at the Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute. His current research focuses on measuring energy burden in low-income communities and developing solutions for energy cost reduction in Texas. He received his master's in global policy studies from the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas at Austin. His primary concentrations were on energy and environmental policy issues, both from a global perspective and with a focus on the Texas oil and gas industry. Thank you, Andrew.
Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for being here and for the previous speakers presenting. I think it was a really nice feed into this presentation that I'm going to be showing you all. I represent the Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute here in Austin, Texas, which is a small nonpartisan nonprofit with a mission aimed at identifying pathways for energy poverty reduction in Texas low-income communities. I have a bit more of a niche research study to share with you all compared to the last few presentations, but I think it'll still be quite relevant to our discussions today. I'm here to speak about the report that we released this summer titled When the Lone Star Froze Over, Winter Storm Uri and the Lived Experiences of Low-Income Communities. Just as a preface, for those of you who may not have heard in depth about Winter Storm Uri, it was a somewhat unprecedented winter weather event that struck Texas in February of 2021. Of course, at this point, that probably seems like old news. It was around 7 months ago, but nevertheless, we find that it still has a lot of relevance in today's policy and policy world, and there are still a number of responses that would still be quite beneficial to low-income communities. And there are a number of long-term effects that continue to affect low-income families today that are from the winter storm. It left 4.5 million electricity customers without electricity during periods of extreme cold in a state where many of the homes are not equipped to deal with such low temperatures. It's estimated that the storm caused over $130 billion in economic losses and resulted in over 700 deaths. Simply put, the storm was a recipe for disaster. There were very sudden drops in temperature, with temperatures dropping below 0 in northern parts of the state and single digits in many of Texas's largest cities, such as Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. I can tell you that the internal temperature in my house got to be about 20 degrees, which is pretty rough. In addition, the cold temperatures caused some power generation and natural gas facilities to go offline, just as demand for electricity and natural gas was spiking as people were trying to heat their homes. And lastly, as electricity fed into many natural gas facilities, there were ripple effects across the grid as many facilities went offline. The storm got a lot of attention from the media and policymakers in its wake. Yet we found that from a research perspective, there was still a missing narrative from low-income communities in the state. So in that vein, we decided to conduct a survey of nearly 1,000 respondents immediately following the winter storm. For our purposes, we were most interested in better understanding the lived experiences of low-income Texans. And with that in mind, we conducted the survey of around 1,000 people. And of that group of people, we had roughly 40% of respondents who identified as low income or very low income. It's first important to sort of gather an understanding of some of the conditions in low income communities that existed prior to the storm. And as such, there are two main points that I'd like to extract from the data that paint an important picture. The first is more of a general concern of electricity affordability among low-income respondents. As you can see, low-income respondents were much more likely to have concerns about electricity affordability compared to their higher income counterparts. About 70% of all low-income respondents said that they have some degree of concern about their electricity affordability going into the storm. So this is before any of the events of the storm occurred. Additionally, thinking about affordability in real time, roughly a third of low-income respondents said that they had some outstanding electricity bill debt before the storm, and about 15% said they had some degree of natural gas debt before the storm. With that in mind, you can see that there were already a number of existing concerns about energy affordability among low-income communities. We found that low-income individuals are often forced to make difficult trade-offs in other categories in order to afford electricity bills. In, I believe, 2019, we conducted a study to research just this very question, and the highest areas of spending that people typically take away from in order to afford electricity are on food and clothing, which are not sustainable for many low-income families, especially for those with children. Based on, with respect to the length of electricity outages experienced during the storm, based on our survey data, there was only a slightly higher likelihood that lower income households would have experienced lengthier electricity outages. And this could likely be explained for a number of reasons and may not fully paint the full picture for many households across the state, just given the amount of people we were able to survey following the storm. But nevertheless, rolling blackouts were theoretically determined by proximity to essential services such as hospitals and police stations. Other researchers have approached this very issue from a different perspective, and perhaps we could touch on that more in the breakout session if we have additional time. But nevertheless, you can see that over a third of all respondents experienced power outages of longer than 2 days during this period of extreme cold. Again, from experience, I didn't have power for 3 days, and I could hear the water freezing in my pipes as I was trying to get through the storm. So, you know, I can only imagine what other families went through during this period of time. And additionally, you can also see that higher income respondents were also somewhat less likely to experience power outages overall. From a natural gas perspective, most respondents actually retain access to natural gas since residential natural gas services are prioritized by Texas law. So there's not really any statistical significance as to income's impact on access to natural gas at the residential level. Property damage is somewhat of a different story. As many of us are aware, low-income families are often more likely to live in housing stock that is older, that lacks insulation and weatherization upgrades, and maybe hasn't gone through some of those energy efficiency upgrades as we just talked about in the last presentation. So with that in mind, over a third of low-income respondents experienced burst water pipes, which is of course an extremely costly and burdensome impact on household well-being, especially during periods of extreme cold temperatures. I knew of anecdotally like 5 people that had this happen, including me. It's not something you want to deal with ever, but of course, for low-income families in particular, it represents an extremely high cost that would need to be remedied in an emergency event. Additionally, low-income respondents were much more likely to experience instances of fallen trees, damage to appliances, and roof damages, again, which are all extremely costly things to have to deal with for families on tighter budgets. Importantly, while the winter weather lasted only for a few days, the effects of the storm continue to impact families in Texas to this day. As you can see by the following responses, low-income survey respondents indicated that they felt stronger impacts in every single one of the following categories. I'm not going to go through all of them, but most notably, I'd like to point out higher reported instances of lost wages, which can be extremely hard to recover from on tight budgets, as well as unaffordable electricity bills for the same reason. Additionally, I'd like to point out slightly higher instances of threats to health, which are, of course, parts of a greater concern that we have about public health in lower income communities. We have to remember that each one of these impacts represents a financial, emotional, or physical impact to low income families. And families don't often have access to the proper resources to be able to quickly bounce back from these things. So that's why we like to fully understand the impacts of this storm and how it continues to linger in families today. As you can see in the aftermath of the storm, electricity bill affordability was a huge concern among all respondents, but especially among lower income respondents. If you look at the right pie graph, over 90% of low-income respondents indicated that they have some degree of worry about electricity bill affordability down the road. About 57% of whom say they are very concerned, which is not a good thing. I would also like to note that while this is the responses that we got from survey respondents, there were a number of high-profile media stories that detailed how some power users ended up with electricity bills in the tens of thousands of dollars that got a lot of media attention and were spread pretty far across social media. And so this, of course, may have some impact on people's concern about electricity bill affordability. I think, we were all a bit concerned when those media stories started coming out, and nobody knew exactly how much money we would owe our respective utilities and electricity bills. But nevertheless, those individuals who received the extremely high power bills only represent a tiny fraction of power users in Texas. And it still may have contributed to the fear of electricity bill affordability. But nevertheless, energy bills are likely to go up for all Texans in the very near future in order to repay the debt that was accrued during the storm. But as we are sort of wrapping up, I wanted to touch a little bit on the policy and legislative responses that followed the storm. The winter storm actually occurred during the middle of the Texas legislative session, where I was actually working at the time, which was pretty interesting to see. While during the time of the legislative session, the storm gathered a ton of political attention, it's also important to note that this happened in the midst of a lot of other heated political arguments during the legislative session. And in Texas, for those who don't know, the legislature only meets for 140 days every 2 years. So a lot has to get done during that period of time. So there are really like two main legislative bills that impact how the winter storm will be repaid and how it impacts low-income power users. So the first is Senate Bill 3, which required the Public Utility Commission to establish weather emergency reliability standards and also created a emergency alert system. The Public Utility Commission actually very recently released some of the standards and rules that power generators will have to adapt in the near future, but they're actually still waiting on the electric grid operator ERCOT to release a report in tandem with the state climatologist that will then further detail the weatherization standards that some of the power generators will have to comply with. Second, House Bill 4922 allocated hundreds of millions of dollars in bonds from the state rainy day fund to support ERCOT's operations through the peak summer months. As we all know, in Texas, most of the time, people incur the highest power bills during the hot summer months. And with all of the debt that was accrued during the storm, there were very high concerns about power utilities being able to continue operations through the summer with a degree of smooth operations. So HB 4922 helped to continue that happening, but this bill actually passed with only 5 minutes left in the legislative session. And in order to get it passed, they removed a provision that would have otherwise provided funds to help reduce the costs of electricity paid by individual ratepayers at the bill level. And then lastly, I'd like to point out that the Railroad Commission, which oversees the natural gas facilities in Texas, has allowed some natural gas facilities to opt out of being designated as critical and therefore not have to go through some of the weatherization requirements, which may be difficult for grid resiliency. And then lastly, With those thoughts in mind, I wanted to point out just 3 main points that really drive the problem home and how it affects the low-income power users in Texas. So during the winter weather event, there were actually 32 hours in which the Public Utility Commission set the market price for electricity at $9,000 per megawatt hour, even though it didn't necessarily need to be, which resulted in $16 billion in excess charges that are going to be passed on to ratepayers in addition to the debt that was also accrued during the storm under normal conditions. And so with that in mind, it's estimated at this current point that power bills are likely to rise $18 per person per year for the next 15 to 20 years, which may not seem like a ton of money for the average person, but when you consider that this was really just for a few days of power usage, it's pretty astronomical. And with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up and thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Andrew. We are at the end of the hour,